Welcome to Historical Secrets long before modern borders were drawn, before the world called it Sudan. This land carried another name, Kush, a kingdom spoken of in ancient scrolls, etched in the shadows of prophecy, and remembered by scholars of faith and history alike. Here, civilizations rose along the Nile. Nubian kings walked with power, and empires clashed for supremacy of Africa's golden corridor. The world sees desert and war, but prophecy sees heritage and destiny. In the Bible, Kush stands not as a forgotten footnote, but as a nation watched by heaven, a people of tall stature, fierce pride, and deep spirit, a land tied to Egypt, Ethiopia, and Israel across centuries. From the pyramids of Meroe to the Christian kingdoms of Nubia, to the crossroads of Islam and Africa, this soil has carried faith, empire, and struggle. Yet today, the land once known for kings is known for conflict and silence. Pause, soft cinematic echo, a prophecy land left in the shadows. But why does Scripture speak of Kush? Why does this region reemerge in end-time discussions? And why does today's turmoil echo warnings from long ago? Tonight, we open the Book of Nations and listen again to the ancient whispers. As Sudan steps back into the pages of prophecy, fade to black whisper, a forgotten throne awakening in a world on edge. Sudan sits at a crossroads where empires once marched, and where great powers still cast long shadows. North, Egypt. East, the Red Sea gateway to Arabia. South, ancient Ethiopia. West, the vast heart of Africa, a land positioned not by accident, but by divine geography. For centuries, mighty kingdoms fought for this corridor, from pharaohs to Ottomans, from British colonial armies to modern alliances. And today, the same struggle continues, not with swords and chariots, but with gold, oil, ports, and geopolitical hunger. Two forces now divide Sudan: the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces. But behind uniforms lie deeper engines: foreign funding, strategic ports, mineral wealth, and a struggle over who will control the Nile's gate. Not just a civil war, a battlefield of global influence. Ancient texts warned nations would fight over lands of wealth, rivers, and power, and that the kingdoms of Kush would face turmoil in days of global shaking. And as the world looks away, distracted, Sudan bleeds quietly. Hospitals abandoned, families fleeing, cities starving, children searching for water in a land rich with gold. A nation once famed for scholars and warriors, now trapped between history and heartbreak. Pause, soft echo. When empires fight, the innocent always fall first. Yet even in chaos, prophecy hints at a remnant, a people preserved for a purpose the world has not yet understood, a forgotten land becoming the center of a coming chapter. Sudan is not just a land of ancient kings. It is a land where the earth itself is treasure. Under its soil lie rivers of gold, one of the richest deposits in the world, a blessing that became a curse. For where gold shines, greed follows. And where greed grows, peace dies. In hidden mining camps, beneath desert heat and silent hills, men search for wealth, while nations quietly compete for control. Gold that could build hospitals, feed the hungry, and lift millions from poverty, instead fuels warlords, mercenaries, and foreign ambitions. The Bible speaks of nations in the last days, trading peace for wealth, turning resources into weapons, and shedding blood for riches buried in dust. Is this not the story unfolding here? A mother walks miles for bread. A child looks for water while trucks leave the country with gold. A nation sits on treasure, yet millions starve. Whispers rise that markets shining far from this land carry the dust of Sudan's sorrow. Gold glitters, but behind it, tears glisten brighter. This is not simply economics. It is a spiritual battle between the wealth of the earth and the dignity of a people made in the image of God. Pause, soft whisper. When treasure rules, humanity falls. but in prophetic history, no injustice remains forever. Every kingdom built on blood eventually meets the justice of heaven. A trembling ground, awaiting prophecy, a nation standing between judgment and redemption. This conflict is not confined to Sudan's soil. Its echoes stretch beyond deserts and rivers, into the halls of foreign capitals, into secret boardrooms, into global strategies written far from Africa. No war of this scale survives without hands behind it. Armies stand on the ground, but interests hover in the shadows above. Foreign powers seek influence over the Red Sea trade route. Intelligence networks follow mineral trails. Private militias answer to distant paymasters. And rival nations feed the fire, each believing they shape the future here, but unseen by them all. Prophecy says nations will rise and fall like dust in the wind, when pride replaces justice, and human power challenges divine order. The ancient land of Kush once stood between mighty empires. Now once again it sits between global forces. East and West, Gulf and Africa, faith and ambition. A civil war, yet not civil at all. A struggle for strategic ports, economic routes, and the very heart of Africa's future. And while diplomats speak in quiet rooms, villages burn, people flee, hope thins like smoke in dry air. Scripture warned of times when conflicts would multiply, nations would be shaken, and peace would be fragile as sand in the wind. Is Sudan just another war? Or a sign of shifting ages, where borders blur, alliances twist, and the world enters a season foretold long ago? Pause, haunting whisper. Sometimes the battle on earth mirrors a battle in heaven. And as the world watches other headlines, this war grows, quietly, strategically, dangerously. Soon, it may not be contained. In ancient texts, Kush was not overlooked. It stood among nations named in the great movements of history, and in visions of times yet to unfold. Prophets spoke of lands beyond the rivers of Kush, lands of tall warriors and wide rivers, lands watching Egypt, Ethiopia, and Israel. Lands shaken before global change. Some scholars see Sudan woven quietly into these verses, not as a conqueror, but as a witness to shifting kingdoms. A land near Egypt in turmoil, a region between Ethiopia and the desert, rivers running through ancient bloodlines, warnings of distress in nations around the Nile, of conflicts rising where ancient trade paths once thrived, of turmoil signaling larger storms in the world. Could Sudan be part of those signs? Not as a final battlefield, but as a signal fire in the wilderness, reminding us that the world we know can tremble without warning. Today, Sudan does not roar with attention. It cries quietly, and sometimes prophecy does not thunder. It whispers through suffering lands. For in the days before great shifts, Scripture says nations will groan, the earth will shake, and forgotten places will suddenly stand in the path of history. Pause, breath of stillness. When the world ignores a land, heaven still sees it. And though Sudan bleeds now, prophecy hints at a future where scattered people return, where broken lands rise again, where hope is not lost, only hidden for a season. A land humbled today may be strengthened tomorrow. Every nation passes through seasons. Glory, struggle, silence, awakening. Sudan now walks through its darkest valley, a valley of hunger, exile, and unanswered cries. But valleys are not destinies. They are passages. For history shows, no empire remains forever. No suffering is unseen, and no land forgotten by God stays broken forever. In Scripture, after war and scattering, comes restoration. After tears, healing. After night, dawn. And even here, in wounded streets and empty homes, faith remains. Mothers still pray. Children still dream. Communities still share bread when none is promised. Every nation has a remnant, and Sudan's remnant walks with quiet strength. Prophecy is not only warning, it is promise. One day the rivers of this land will not carry sorrow, but life again, Homes will rise, songs will return to courtyards, and children will run through streets. Where tanks once rolled, the world may turn away, but heaven never has. And as we watch this chapter unfold, we do not respond with fear, but with compassion, with prayer, with hope that the God who watches nations is also near to the brokenhearted. From dust, nations rise. From tears, faith grows. And even in shadows, God is near.